One of the practices that I occasionally engage myself in is mindfulness meditation, Vipassana meditation. When I say engage myself, it's really dilettantish. I only really do it when I'm on holiday, which is a bit bizarre, I know. But when I've got the time and the space, I do like to spend an hour a day being involved in that practice. And one of the things I quite like about it, and which kind of refers to more general practice that I like engaging in, is the way that it places, well, it involves at least partially the placing of attention on parts of the body, or on whatever arises in the mind whilst you're sitting doing this practice. So whilst it's called mindfulness, it's not kind of an ethereal understanding of mind, it's a very embodied understanding of it. So you kind of observe the practice, the behaviours of your own body and your own kind of emotional state, and what kind of mental images are arising whilst you're doing it. And there's no real separation between that kind of continuum, or that set of places on which to put your attention for a moment. When I say it carries on into my general life, that's just because I've developed this habit, which I think I've mentioned before in these videos, to do with living deliberately, kind of borrowing from Henry David Thoreau, which is just the several times a day, several dozen times a day, probably several hundred times a day actually, I've tried to invest whichever action I'm engaging with at that moment, usually very simple actions. Holding a camera phone in the hand, for example, putting one foot in front of the other, reaching out and holding a doorknob, whatever that may be. I try to inhabit that action as fully as I possibly can, and derive as much sensory information from that, I guess, or try to engage with the action at the level of its sensory engagement, I suppose. It's just a habit I've developed. The reason why I'm talking about that is to do with a video I was watching about Heidegger. I've talked about Heidegger before in here, and I keep becoming interested in Heidegger for a while and then falling off the boat for a bit and then getting back on again. I've been trying to get back into Heidegger a little bit more recently, and one of the things that he talks about in his earlier writing, and Being in Time at least, is to do with, and I'm again being really dilettantish here, I'm not a philosophy scholar, so all of my information is very partial, and I'm probably doing that great body of work a complete disservice. But my understanding of parts of Heidegger is to do with this kind of almost a pre-reflective engagement. That's not his language, but there's a way of engaging with the activity that one is doing, which is completely seamless, which is absolutely not of the order of the mindfulness that I was just talking about in terms of Vipassana meditation. If you're hammering a nail into a piece of wood, or if you're swinging an axe, or if you're walking, or whatever the activity may be, that engagement is one of transparent coping. This is Hubert Dreyfus's interpretation of Heidegger. It's one of transparent coping. There is no separation between the self that is carrying out the action. Well, there is no self carrying out the action separate from the action itself. The being that is active in that moment includes the action itself. So being is entirely situated and embedded within, and seamlessly connected to the situation, to the act of walking, to the act of swinging the axe, to the action of knocking nails in with a hammer, whatever the action may be. And one would only become mindful of an activity in Heidegger if something goes wrong. If the head falls off the hammer, or if you stumble, or if you step on something sharp, or if you swing the axe and miss the tree somehow. If something goes wrong, your attention is thrown onto the action, if you like, the limits of the being. The being is resituated, I suppose, to not include the action in quite the same way. I'm not sure what the implications of that are. I mean, there's something quite interesting I think about in terms of mindfulness, because I say mindfulness seems to be, in a sense, the opposite of what Heidegger is talking about. But at the same time, its aspirations seem somewhat in parallel. To the extent that Heidegger's understanding of being in that model of a kind of an engagement with the activity, so that being is situated as alongside the activity and in the activity. I mean, there's a kind of non-duality implied in that, which I think would be an ambition of mindfulness meditation. But paradoxically, mindfulness meditation seems to rely on exactly that kind of attentive, not exactly self-other-object, subject-object duality, but some kind of recognition that there is attention at play. There is an ability to focus that attention onto the body and the body's activities, and a kind of implied duality there, really. I don't really know what the outcome of that is. I suppose the intention within mindfulness is to no, I have no idea. No, I'm out of my depth, really. I think it's just an interesting paradox there or something. And it probably emerges because I don't understand what I'm talking about fully. And I'm trying to put together frames of reference which really, really don't go together. There's probably my confusion is probably an artifact of that ungainliness of thought more than actually the stuff itself. I'll have another think about it and come back to it later, perhaps.